Шановні колеги, ми продовжуємо
Dear colleagues, we shall continue our working day, and we give the floors to the Principal Deputy Chief Monitor of the OSCE SMM to Ukraine, Mr. Alexander Hook.
Good afternoon, dear friends. The security situation in the East remained tense and volatile, with some troubling indicators noted. As you can see on this chart here, last week was keeping in with the two previous weeks. Troubling, however, was the increase in the use of Minsk-proscribed weapons, namely mortars, tanks, artillery, including multiple launch rocket systems. Last week, compared to the previous week, the SMM actually recorded a 250% increase in the number of explosions attributable to artillery and a 12-fold increase in those relating to mortars. The SMM recorded 27 explosions caused by multiple launch rocket systems. The previous week, it recorded none. This use, as the graph also shows, was evident this week too. Already, with the figures just available for the first 3 days of this week, indicated in the last column of this graph here, we have recorded almost the same number of explosions caused by Minsk-proscribed weapons compared to all of last week. This week's SMM recorded use of multiple launch rocket system is of particular concern and note. This Tuesday evening, our monitors in so-called DPR-controlled Horlivka heard one outgoing salvo containing at least 20 rounds of MLRS, plus an additional 615 explosions assessed as outgoing rounds from undetermined weapons there. The following day, our monitors in government-controlled Netailove, 22 kilometers northwest of Donetsk, heard within 20 minutes 40 MLRS salvo with between 5 and 8 rounds in each salvo. Last week's violence was mostly confined to a limited number of areas along the contact line. In the Avdiivka-Yasinovata-Donetsk airport area, accounting for 46% of the recorded ceasefire violations. In the Svetlodarsk-Debaltsevo area, 23%, areas west and north of Horlivka, 15%, Western Luhansk region 7%, and areas east and northeast of Mariupol 5%. With 7% of ceasefire violations, it would be easy to overlook the gravity of the situation in the Western Luhansk region. Behind that relatively low figure lie other more alarming figures. Some 40% of all SMM recorded ceasefire violation caused by weapons, by heavy weapons proscribed by Minsk occurred in Western Luhansk region. Of all the mortar explosions recorded by the SMM last week, 3/4 of them occurred there. Dear friends, Friday last week was one of the worst days we have had for a long time, with over 2,800 ceasefire violations recorded of that day, 36% of the week's total. We were given a demonstration of how volatile the situation is on the ground. It was on Friday too that some of our monitors were attacked by so-called armed DPR members in Yasinovata. As well as stealing one of our unmanned aerial vehicles, the so-called DPR members fired a burst of small arms fire, impacting just 5 meters from our monitors. Such aggression is clearly a violation of the Minsk agreements, which stipulates there should be safe access for SMM monitors. It is, as the chief monitor said in a statement released that day, not only a direct threat to the lives of our monitors, but a direct and straight challenge to the collective will of the 57 OSCE participating states. Dear friends, the incident is also ironic. The so-called DPR are the first to the megaphone to demand that the SMM monitor shelling incidents, yet it is exactly what our monitors were doing when they were fired upon by the so-called DPR. The monitors were about to launch an unmanned aerial vehicle to monitor the reported shelling of the Donetsk water filtration station earlier that morning. We did actually manage to launch the UAV twice earlier that morning. They spotted 4 impact sites at the filtration station, all of which were assessed as having been caused by 82mm mortar rounds. Here you can see some of the damage caused to one of the pressure stations of the plant. Dear friends, the attack on the water filtration station demonstrates a number of things. Firstly, a callous disregard for the needs of the civilian population. Hitting the chlorine tanks there would spell an environmental disaster for the wider region. In addition to almost 500,000 people on both sides of the contact line are dependent on the plant for clean drinking water. Already 22,000 residents of Avdiivka are relying on reserves that are dangerously running low. Secondly, this particular unfortunate incident demonstrates yet again the immediate need for the sites to disengage all along the contact line and from around the filtration station in particular. I don't believe anyone deliberately targeted the plant, but the sites are positioned very close to the plant and very close to one another. It is unavoidable that the plant gets caught in the crossfire, and it is inevitable that the civilian population will continue to pay the sites for the site's refusal to disengage. And thirdly, the strike on the plant clearly proves the presence of proscribed weapons within the withdrawal lines. On this map here, you can see the filtration plant in the middle there marked almost directly on the contact line. You can also see on both sides of the contact line the 15-kilometer withdrawal lines there in the dotted lines, which is the withdrawal lines for the 82mm mortar. And go back to the picture, please. And finally, the circle around the filtration plant from within 82mm mortars must have been fired, given the maximum range of such weapons. Basically, the weapons that fired on the filtration plant were positioned inside the withdrawal lines. Clearly, despite what the sites say and promise to do, please put the picture up again. Clearly, despite what the sites say and promise to do, the weapons have not yet been withdrawn. We in fact see weapons in violation of the withdrawal lines on a daily basis. Next picture. Here in this image, taken by a SMM UAV on Monday last week, you can see T-64 tanks in government-controlled Asnalove in violation of the agreed withdrawal lines. And on this picture here, a UAV image clearly proves the presence of a D-30 towed artillery guns in so-called DPR-controlled Sakhanka this Tuesday, again in violation of agreed withdrawal lines. 3 pieces there, clearly visible on this picture, if I can see it again, please, here. 3 D-30 artillery pieces there in non-government controlled Sakhanka. Dear friends, more than 600 monitors are on the ground in eastern Ukraine trying to help the sides to resolve the conflict. But we can only do so if the sides stop shooting on our monitors and generally provide us with unhindered and safe access. Without it, we cannot verify compliance with commitments to cease fire, withdraw weapons, and disengage forces and formations. As usual, at the end of my statement, I would like to inform you about the latest mission numbers here. As of today, the mission has 717 monitors, of whom 614 are deployed in the east. In addition, there are 335 Ukrainian colleagues and 91 other international staff working for the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hook. Any questions, dear colleagues, please?
Levon Azesyan, Charitable Foundation is
Two questions about freedom of movement in Luhansk region. Concerning ongoing difficulties with traffic corridors in Luhansk region, there are no any full operating transport corridor in Luhansk region. If there are any chances to open a new transport corridor or to reopen Zolote-Pervomaisk transport corridor, and why parties can't resolve this issue for 2 years. And the second question is about repairing of bridge in Stanitsa-Lugansk entry-exit checkpoint. As far as I know, with my conversation with headquarters of Security Service of Ukraine, as well as with Luhansk State Military Civil Administration, they promised that Ukrainian side provided guarantees for repairing operations at that bridge. If there are any restrictions to repair it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. It is indeed so that at the moment, all along the 500-kilometer long contact line, there are only 5 crossing points at the moment. 4 of those are in the Donetsk region, 1 is in the Luhansk region, and it's that broken pedestrian passage over the damaged Stanitsa-Luhanska bridge. We have long been calling upon the sides to consider opening additional crossing points, in particular in the Luhansk region. The one you have mentioned, the Zolote crossing, would be one that would be feasible to carry not just pedestrian traffic, but also vehicular traffic. It is even more important to note that the area in Zolote where that crossing could take place is one of the 3 disengagement areas where actually some disengagement has taken place, and where ceasefire violations ever since September last year had been reduced to an absolute minimum. The conditions are there. The SMM monitors that area specifically every day. You will find this in our reports. Every day the monitors go back to these disengagement areas, including Zolote, and we would document any changes on the ground there. It is up to the signatories to Minsk to now come to conclusion there to open this additional crossing, which is ready and where the sites have actually disengaged. Now, with regard to the bridge in Stanitsa-Luhanska, Stanitsa-Luhanska and the area around the bridge has also been designated as a disengagement area. Their disengagement did not take place, as a result of which we record on a very regular basis ceasefire violations there. As soon as the conditions improve, the mission would report. It is up to both the Ukrainian forces and others to agree as to when the situation would allow both an assessment on the current damage, but also then of repairs to take place. Disengagement is needed at this specific area, both to relieve the civilians to cross that bridge, but also to enable those who are able to reconstruct the bridge to do so. Everyone is ready. Those who want to repair the bridge, the civilians can't wait for it. The SMM is there every day. The only ones that aren't ready are the sites that are still positioned far too close to one another at the bridge, who are not enabling those who want to help to complete that important work in that specific area. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have time for further questions, unfortunately. Thank you for coming and looking forward to seeing you here next week.
Okay, thank you.